I'm writing my own tabletop RPG while also documenting the bulk of the process. In this video, I'll be explaining my core concepts of the system, my resolution mechanics, and generally where I want to go with it all. Organized Chaos is a dice pool-based role-playing system where the goal is for the players to be able to tell essentially any story with engaging mechanics. Because I've noticed, with so many RPGs, that they really only have engaging gameplay with combat and not a whole lot else. Sure, there are sessions where you're so neck-deep in your story you might still be engaged even if a die is never rolled, yet I've never understood the pride in that, because I believe gameplay should enhance the story and not compete against it. Archduke Frederick's Killer Ball should be a challenge to your characters, and not just whether or not you yourself are any sort of socially adept or not. Foot travel should be more than just a brief description of a landscape change, and maybe you get jumped by raiders on the way. Leading an army is a lot more than just dueling the enemy general and their top cronies in one-on-one combat while the war happens around you. These are all their own skills and challenges in the real world, and I feel should be represented as such, not for the sake of realism, mind you, but for the sake of engaging challenge and the story enhancement that brings, which is really the whole point of games when it comes down to it. I'm going to save showing off combat, social, and travel mechanics for other videos, though, and stick to the more general, broad, all-encompassing strokes here. The core resolution mechanic in Organized Chaos is, like I mentioned above, a dice pool system. Your dice pool is decided by whatever skill, or if you don't have a relevant skill, an attribute you're rolling for whatever check. For every 20 points you have in a skill or attribute, you add one die to your pool. If a die comes up with an even number, it's a success. If a die comes up with an odd number, it's a failure. All with a success gradient against your game organizer's target number. For an example of what this actually means, say your character is trying to kick a door open. It's a cheap door, so the game organizer, or our equivalent of a game master or dungeon master, sets the target number at 2 successes. Our character, Karate Jim, has a strength of 20 and a karate skill of 100. If Karate Jim uses his karate skill, he can roll 5 dice to attempt the challenge. Using his karate skill, Jim rolls 2 4s, 2 1s, and an 8. Meaning he gets 3 successes and easily kicks the door not only open, but kicks it down completely. Say Karate Jim had no karate skills and just has an ironic name instead. If he uses his strength alone, say if he had no other applicable skills at all, he can roll 2 dice to attempt the challenge. Jim rolls 2 dice and rolls a 2 and a 1 equaling only 1 success. Depending on the game organizer's judgment, maybe Jim kicks a hole in the door big enough to stick your hand in and unlock it. However, maybe he cut his leg in doing so and took some damage. Or perhaps his leg is now stuck in the door and the combatant he was pursuing can now attack his leg while Jim and his allies try and unstick it. Or another alternative to only getting 1 success on a target number of 2 is that he didn't get the door open, but now the lock is broken, and his next attempt at kicking the door open now only needs 1 success instead of 2. Now, if Jim had just rolled 2 successes on either attempt, he would have just kicked the door open plain as day. If he had rolled 4 or 5 successes, since it's double or over the target number, that would have been a critical success, and maybe the door would have flown off its hinges and smacked the combatant straight in the face, doing some damage or knocking him prone. And if he'd have rolled 0 successes, then that would have been a critical failure, and maybe he just hurt his leg and took some damage in trying to kick the door open with no progress actually made on the door itself. Though I should say I am still toying with the balance of the critical system, because as it is now, it seems like a major potential to screw players over with checks that have a higher target number. Like if a target number is 6 for something really difficult and you roll 3 successes, then that would be a critical failure in this system as it is, and that seems needlessly harsh to me. A few tweaks that come to mind are making criticals over double for a success and under half for a failure, but that would make it almost impossible to get a critical success on anything but a very low target number challenge. Alternatively, I could make it under half for a critical failure and double or over for a critical success, but that could also leave some needless confusion as the player and GO alike have to remember how the ruling actually goes. Of course, I could just leave it the same too, say it's more likely you critical fail in such a difficult challenge. Really, I'm not positive on any of these balance tweaks so far, so let me know what you think about this and anything else in here in the comments. Overall, this leaves a lot of room for flexibility on the end of your game organizer, which can be really useful for both preset and spontaneous storytelling. This, by accident at first, and now fully embraced mechanic, creates a dice-agnostic system. So as long as you have an equal chance of a binary success or failure, it can be used for Organized Chaos. A d6, d20, d10, d4, even just flipping a coin, Heads means it's a success, and tails means it's a failure. A concept I chose to embrace because it fits great with my principle of making organized chaos as cheap and easy to get into as I can. The other part I'd like to talk about today is our main progression system in character points, or CHP for short. In organized chaos, our progression system isn't in classic experience points. The usual beat an ogre and everyone gains 100 XP, and at 1000 XP everyone levels up affair. Instead, for beating that ogre, everyone gains a dozen character points, which they can spend immediately on their character. Bring that fencing skill from 88 to 100, and bump all your checks up with that skill from 4 dice to 5, with the characters only leveling up once they reach a certain threshold of character points gained. Say the starting amount of character points is 100, and over their adventures they gain an additional 100 points, bringing their total up to 200, that's when they level up and gain some points to spend on attributes. There are two main purposes of character points beyond just skills. The first one being in buying perks, which is basically just what it sounds like. Instead of spending your character points on skills, you can save them up and buy a perk that offers some sort of benefit. For example, Tough Hide, which naturally gives your character 2 points of armor, which you can buy for, say, 50 points. And while that is 50 points that could have gone into sword fighting, wilderness survival, or bartering, 2 points of armor could be the difference between you keeping or losing that arm to that orc swinging an axe at you. The other main purpose of character points is in buying degrees of advantage. A degree of advantage being you can re-roll a failed die once. If you have 2 degrees of advantage, you can re-roll 2 failed dice, and so on. And while we're here, I may as well explain that disadvantage works in the same way, and that 1 degree of disadvantage means you have to re-roll a successful die once, and that 2 degrees of disadvantage means you have to re-roll 2 successful dice, and so on as well. For every 5 points spent, you gain 1 degree of advantage on your next roll. The cost being that those 5 points are burned and gone forever. Whatever divisible 5 points that could have gone into a skill or a perk are just gone now. However, 15 points is a very worthwhile cost in an emergency, when say you absolutely need to make that shot into that dragon's eye, or else the thing is going to melt you and everyone else in your party the next turn. That, or the check to try and jump out of the way of said fire breath and not get melted. Now, why am I going with this system instead of a traditional XP system? It's not just for the sake of being different, but for its immediate versatility, which is especially important in a universal system, and doubly so with what I want to do in making a system where you can engagingly tell most any story. What I mean by that is how easy it is to reward gameplay things that aren't just beating an enemy. Climbed a tall mountain, 20 points. Won a debate against Lord Alexander, 10 points. Sacked the enemy capital with your army before they could reinforce by expertly force-marching your troops at just the right moment, 15 points. Had a very nice in-character moment with perfect roleplay as opposed to an optimal power play, 5 points. It all depends on your game organizer, and your play group. It also does away with the experience points problem of tracking what are often numbers larger than what they actually need to be for experience points levels. It's just a simple, here are 10 points, are you going to invest them in a skill, a perk, or are you just going to bank them for later? That's a very strong core principle I have in developing organized chaos, is that all the math has to be as simple and quick as possible, usually done by making it all in some easy divisible like 2, 5, 10, or 20. Of course, there is an alternate solution to that problem already in milestone leveling, in which experience isn't tracked and your DM just says, you completed that story arc, everyone just levels up now. Which, I mean, you could do with organized chaos easily enough. You completed that story arc, everyone gets 100 points, which levels everyone up. Though it does kind of kill some of the spontaneity, steady progression, and motivation of how the system is more traditionally built to be used, but that doesn't really matter as long as your table and your game organizer are happy. So in review, Organized Chaos is a dice pool-based, universal system, with its core principles being flexibility and storytelling through engaging mechanics, being cheap and easy to get into, and all the math being as quick and simple to do as possible, among other things I'll get to in future episodes. Next video is going to be about world building and not exactly related to Organized Chaos, both because I have some philosophy I want to say on the matter, and I think it's a good way to get some more folks in here because I know full well TTRPG development is a hell of a niche subject. The next Organized Chaos devlog will be about skills and attributes, and maybe a bit about a few of the settings and campaigns I'm currently working on for Organized Chaos, but we'll see how long that video runs for. Until then, thank you all for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments. I know I'm being pretty ambitious with my plans for this system, but it's what I want to make, and I don't plan on changing that.